My name is Amina. I stand before you as a woman transformed, a seeker of truth in the midst of shadows. I grew up in the vibrant heart of Casablanca, adorned by tradition, faith, and the echoing call to prayer. Every dawn lit my path as I adorned my hijab and stepped into the world. Belief wrapped around me like a warm cloak, but underneath that facade lay a void, an aching desperation for a connection I could not grasp. I prayed. I taught the Qur'an. Yet I remained unfulfilled, a ghost wandering among the living. Then, everything shifted in a heartbeat. On a rainy afternoon, as fate wove its sinister threads, I found myself struck by a car, a moment that fractured reality itself. Suddenly, I was hovering in a realm beyond comprehension, liberated from my earthly bonds. In that infinite stillness, I encountered him. Jesus. He stood bathed in a light so divine that fear melted away, and in that sacred moment I realized I was not just here to meet him, but to awaken to a revelation that would rock the very foundations of my existence. What I witnessed obliterated every notion I held dear. I was shown the grand tapestry of our world, woven with threads of empowerment, yet distorted by the powerful elite who thrive on division and discord. I felt the weight of humanity's struggle, the manipulation orchestrated by those detached from our suffering. The very political systems meant to serve us were revealed as instruments of deception, tools wielded to control our perceptions and keep us from understanding our true nature and the love that binds us all. Now, I find an urgent calling within me to share this profound truth and ignite a fire in the hearts of those who wander in darkness. People are awakening, not just in my community, but across the globe. The battle is not just for individual souls, but for collective consciousness. We must awaken to our power to disrupt the narrative that has kept us yielding to fear. And you, dear viewer, are being beckoned to join this awakening. Before we dive deeper into this extraordinary testimony, I implore you, leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I want to connect with you across this vast landscape of truth. And if your spirit is yearning for more revelations, subscribe now to Truth from Beyond. This isn't just a channel, it's a portal to awakening. Your journey begins here, and the truth awaits only the brave. I grew up in a traditional home in Casablanca, Morocco, a place where every brick, every prayer, and every sunrise carried the weight of our faith. From a young age, I was taught to submit myself to the routines of life. The sound of the adhan ringing through the streets, the call to prayer that shaped our days and nights. I wore my hijab with pride, dedicated my time to teaching young girls the Qur'an, and studied literature with the hope of sharing my insights with the world. Yet, beneath the surface, a storm raged within me, an emptiness that shadowed my every prayer. I followed each tradition, expected to feel the divine love and connection that seemed to surge through everyone else. Instead, I felt invisible, lost in the crowd, surrounded by the pillars of our faith, yet lacking a personal touch from God. Then came that fateful day, a moment that would shatter my routine and thrust me into a realm beyond my wildest comprehensions. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind that makes the air thick and heavy. On my way home from the mosque, was caught off guard by a speeding car as I attempted to cross the street. I remember the impact vividly, like a thunderclap in my chest. In those blinding seconds, as I was thrown to the ground, I felt a strange detachment from my body. I floated, disoriented yet strangely calm, as the world twisted into shades of gray and white. I was slipping away, leaving my physical form behind, and all I could think was how ironic it was to feel this free when I had spent my whole life following rules. That's when I met him, Jesus. He stood amid a brilliant light that enveloped me like a warm embrace, transcending all pain and fear. I bowed my head, overwhelmed not only by his presence but also by an inexplicable love that shattered my notions of God and spirituality. In that moment, surrounded by this illuminating aura, he revealed the truths hidden beneath layers of societal deception. I was shown the fragility of human life, the manipulation of the elite, and the hidden agendas that fueled conflict and division in our world. I saw wars ignited not by necessity, but orchestrated under false pretenses, masked as power plays by those in high places who stood detached from the suffering they cause. Each revelation unraveled my understanding of faith and existence. I felt the weight of humanity's suffering, the strain of years of spiritual war, where the battle was not just for territory or wealth, but for the very souls of men and women. Jesus spoke to me of the awakening that is upon us, that a reckoning is imminent where the true nature of leaders and their ambitions will be revealed to all. I witnessed a tapestry of societal breakdowns, fueled by technology that served only to deepen our divisions while distracting us from the truth. The devices we so willingly embraced were tools of the elite, further drawing us away from genuine connection, replacing meaningful moments with fleeting notifications and artificial interactions. As I began to comprehend the magnitude of these truths, I felt an intense urgency swell within me. The visions of the future were chaotic, filled with cries for help and the echoes of betrayal that rang in the streets. Jesus pointed to the masses, stirring in their hearts a desire for change, for awakening against the backdrop of deceit and despair. He illuminated the path toward reconciliation, not just across religions, but among all those weary souls trapped in cycles of division and hatred. He urged me to return, to share this revelation, to bridge the gulf that separates us from the truth of our collective humanity. I could feel time rushing forward, an impending storm drawing near, and I knew I could not remain stilled in fear or confusion. And then, just like that, I was jolted back into my body, gasping for air on the cold pavement, surrounded by onlookers who had witnessed the accident. The sound of sirens hummed closer, yet my mind was racing with echoes of what I had just experienced. I stood at the precipice of a decision: to return to a life of expectation, or to embark on a path toward a greater purpose that reached far beyond my previous understanding. As reality solidified around me, I realized I could no longer ignore the call to awaken not just myself, but all those who feel lost in the shadows of doubt. The questions lingered, the revelations now seeds planted in my soul, driving me toward the next chapter of this extraordinary journey. I remember the day everything changed. I was a truck driver, hauling freight across the country. A simple man living a simple life. I had a routine, one that revolved around the hum of the engine and the feel of the road beneath my wheels. I took pride in my work, in the responsibility of delivering goods to people who depended on them. But beneath the surface of my daily grind, something was gnawing at me, a sense of impending doom that I couldn't quite place. I brushed it off, attributing it to the stress of my job and the weight of expectations from my family. They saw me as a provider, but they didn't see the turmoil that churned within. Then came the accident, a moment etched into my memory like a jagged scar. It happened so fast. A tire blowout, the truck swerving out of control, the world around me spinning into chaos. In the instant before impact, time seemed to stretch, pulling me into a darkness deeper than I'd ever known. As I lost consciousness, I felt an otherworldly pull, a detachment from my earthly struggles. Suddenly, I was weightless, suspended in a vast expanse of darkness that morphed into light. I was both terrified and exhilarated, unsure if I was alive or truly dead. In that surreal space, I encountered him, Jesus. His presence was palpable, a luminous figure radiating love and wisdom. I felt drawn to him, as if he were illuminating the darkest corners of my soul. In that moment, everything I had ever known or believed was laid bare before me. He spoke, not with words, but through the essence of his being. It felt like a truth I had always known deep inside but had been too afraid to admit. He revealed to me the hidden agendas that drive the world: political powers, societal manipulation by the elite, the manipulation of truths for control and division. The words resonated with urgency, awakening something dormant within me. He showed me flashes of our world, tensions rising between nations, division among people based on faith and ideology. I saw leaders cloaked in deception, whispering sweet lies, while the reality of their agendas unfolded in shadowy corners. Wars fought not just on fields, but in the hearts and minds of humanity, where fear is sown to reap control. I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on my spirit. The revelation burned within me, igniting a fire of understanding that demanded to be shared. This was a spiritual war far beyond my comprehension, a battle for the very souls of mankind. As I floated in that divine space, I was shown the duality of technology, a tool for connection, but also a weapon for division. The same devices that bring us together can tear us apart when wielded by the wrong hands. I witnessed future generations trapped in cycles of insignificance, their worth measured in likes and shares, their realities crafted by unseen hands of power. Jesus implored me to awaken, not just for myself, but for others, lost in the chaos of their lives, tethered to a reality designed to blind them to the truth. But how could I convey this urgency to a world so steeped in deception? And just as I began to grasp the enormity of my calling, I felt myself being gently pulled back, the light of that encounter gradually fading. The urgency in Jesus' voice echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the revelations that awaited the world. As I drifted away from that sacred space, I realized I had a purpose, a mission to awaken those who remain unaware of the spiritual war raging around us. The truth demanded to be spoken, yet doubt crept in like a whisper in the night. Would they listen? Would they understand? The clock was ticking, and time was slipping away. I find myself living an ordinary life, navigating the ups and downs like anyone else. I'm a truck driver, spending endless hours behind the wheel, my only companions the stretches of asphalt and the faint hum of the engine. The days blend into one another, filled with deliveries and lone meals at roadside diners where the waitresses know my order by heart. Yet beneath this facade of routine lies an unquenchable thirst for something deeper, an understanding of purpose, a divine encounter that eludes my grasp. Life, for me, has always been about the road and its transient pleasures. But there's a gnawing emptiness, a spiritual void that lurks beneath the surface. And then came that night. An ordinary night turned extraordinary in an instant. I was driving home after a long day, fatigue settling over me thick and heavy. I remember the headlights of an oncoming vehicle, the blur of motion, and then nothingness. In what felt like an eternity, I was suspended, drifting through a space devoid of time and place, a near-death experience that shifted everything. I felt a sense of detachment from my body, as if tethered to the material world by a fragile thread. In that dark abyss, I heard a voice, clear and resounding. It echoed within me, cutting through the stillness. "Fear not, for I am Jesus," he said, appearing before me in a light so radiant it enveloped me completely. His presence was warm, full of compassion, and in that moment, I was overwhelmed by a profound sense of peace. No longer was I just an average man behind the wheel. I was a soul stripped bare, exposed to the truths of the universe. I felt my pain, my regrets, and my sorrows laid open before him, but also something else, an insatiable hunger for truth, for revelation that transcends the mundane. As we conversed, he opened my eyes to the hidden agendas orchestrated by the elite, a manipulation woven intricately into the fabric of our lives. I saw how they fanned the flames of division, cultivating hatred and fear among us. I witnessed the orchestrated chaos in the world around me, wars that raged not for justice but for profit, leaders who thrived on conflict, all while we, the people, were left in the dark. Their lies were a deception, dressed in fine words and polished smiles, all designed to keep us from awakening to our innate connection to one another and to God. It was a revelation that struck me like a bolt of lightning, igniting a passion within my heart to seek and spread the truth. In the depth of this experience, I was shown visions, images flashing before my eyes that illuminated the spiritual war taking place around us. I saw families torn apart, communities fractured by misunderstanding, all driven by a relentless tide of technological advancement that tethered rather than liberated. The devices that bind us in chaos also possess the power to isolate and deceive, and I felt a sacred urgency rise within me. We must awaken from this deep sleep, or risk losing all that matters. The battle isn't just for our souls, it's for our hearts and minds, urging us to reclaim love and unity amidst the madness. As quickly as my encounter unfolded, it began to slip away, leaving me breathless and lost in my own body once more. I awoke in the hospital, surrounded by the sterile scent of antiseptic and the distant beeping of machines. My heart raced, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. I felt an undeniable call to action, a need to share what had been revealed to me. But how? How could I take this newfound awareness back into the grind of everyday life, when those around me remained oblivious, ensnared in their own silent struggles? The urgency clamped around my chest like a vice as I pondered the implications of my awakening. What was I meant to do with this burden of truth now entwined with my soul? And though the thought lingered with an electric charge in the air, I realized then that my journey was only beginning. There were deeper layers to peel back, a world in turmoil, yet brimming with potential for restoration and grace. The questions piled up within me, yearning for answers as I stepped back into the cacophony of life, determined yet unsure. What awaited me on the other side of this transformative experience? I could sense the next chapter unfolding, a path that would lead to understandings that could shatter barriers. But I needed to prepare myself for the trials ahead. The true awakening beckoned, and the shadows danced at the edges, ready to reveal their secrets. I was just an average worker in a factory, moving through life with the rhythm of machines echoing around me. Days blurred into nights. I took pride in my job, but my heart felt a persistent emptiness. Every evening after work, I returned home exhausted, only to collapse on the couch as responsibilities weighed heavily upon me. I was a husband and father, but somewhere along the lines, I had lost touch with my own spirit. It was in this haze of routine and disconnection that I found myself facing a crisis, an accident that would change everything. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was on my way to work when a reckless driver, lost in the distractions of his phone, struck my car head-on. The world around me faded into chaos, and I could feel my consciousness slipping away. Pain was just a distant memory as darkness enveloped me. I remember the feeling of weightlessness, as if all my burdens were lifted. In that void, I experienced a profound stillness, a brief moment of complete surrender. Little did I know, I was stepping into a near-death experience that would soon unravel the hidden truths of existence. In that dark silence, a light began to emerge, flickering gently at first, then expanding into a brilliant radiance. My heart raced anew, filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. As I moved towards this light, I understood I was not alone. There stood a figure in the brilliance, a sense of unconditional love radiating from him. "I am Jesus," he said softly, but the gravity of his presence was overwhelming. At that moment, I realized I stood before the embodiment of love and knowledge, the essence that transcends all human understanding. As I gazed at him, waves of revelation crashed over me. He began to unveil the truth about the world, the chaos caused by political maneuvering, the lies spun by powerful elite, the spiritual war raging not just in the heavens but on earth, infecting every corner of society. I saw visions of people blinded by hate and division, a chaotic dance of power where leaders manipulated their followers, distracting them with trivial concerns while masking the true intentions hidden beneath their facades. He spoke of a world on the brink, embroiled in betrayal and deception, urging me to awaken to this reality. The awareness of these hidden agendas struck me to my core. Jesus revealed that we are all pawns in a game much larger than ourselves, a struggle for souls. He showed me glimpses of future calamities if humanity continued on this path of ignorance and denial. I felt a call to action echo through my being. You must share this message, for many are ensnared in false security, he instructed. The weight of this revelation hung heavy on my spirit, as I understood the pivotal role I had to play in the unfolding narrative of awakening. But suddenly, the warmth began to fade, the light slowly dimming as the illusion of safety reasserted itself. I was being pulled back to my body, the reality of my mundane existence coming back into focus. I awoke in the hospital, pain mingling with an intensified awareness of everything Jesus had shown me, truths about life, and the profound deception that surrounds us. How could I return to my ordinary life knowing what lay hidden beneath the surface? I lay there, caught between two worlds, wrestling with the urgency of my mission and the fear of what revealing this truth could cost me. Yet even as I realized the implications of my insights, a chilling silence loomed, for I knew my awakening had only just begun. I was an ordinary man, a truck driver navigating the endless highways that crisscross our nation. My life was filled with the mundane routine of deliveries, fueling stations, and the occasional diner with the same old stories told in whispered tones. The road was my solace, yet it was also a prison of solitude, a space where my thoughts spiraled into darkness. It was during one of those long nights, with the engine humming beneath me, that everything changed. A sudden flash of headlights, a screeching of brakes, and then endless darkness. In that moment, suspended between life and death, I felt a weightlessness wash over me. I drifted away from the wreckage, my spirit unbound and free. Then, like the dawn breaking after a long night, I saw him. Jesus stood before me, radiant and encompassing, embodying a truth I had long sought, but never understood. I felt my heart swell with recognition. A pain I never knew existed began to dissolve in his presence. "You have questions," he said. His voice was soft yet thunderous, echoing through the emptiness that surrounded us. The clarity he brought was staggering. It wasn't just the whys of my own life, but the why of everything that lay before humanity. In that sacred space, I was granted visions that pinned me against the reality of our world. I saw politicians swathed in deceit, wielding power under the guise of benevolence, but instead orchestrating a grand deception. They were puppets of an elite class, driving us towards chaos, fragmenting society through fear and division. Each act of war, each discussion around peace, spilled forth like a river of lies, weaving a tapestry that concealed the true agenda, the manipulation of truth to mold our perceptions. I understood then that the ongoing spiritual war wasn't just a tale of the past. It was a living, breathing entity, present in our day-to-day lives. Jesus pointed, and my eyes were drawn to the relentless conflict erupting across the globe. I watched as families became collateral damage, as children were torn from their homes in the name of ideals that masked a more sinister plot. "You must awaken your brothers and sisters," he urged. "The world is drowning in a sea of apathy, caught in the grip of technology synonymous with conveniences but laced with control." The images were haunting. The faces of those worshipping technology while forsaking the Creator were burned into my memory. A visceral tug of urgency pulled at me. This wasn't just a warning. It was a call to action. As my reality shifted, the veil of deception began to lift. I felt the threads connecting society snap one by one, revealing a tapestry of fear designed to keep us compliant, to keep our eyes averted from the spiritual truth that binds us all. "These divisions should not define you," Jesus implored, his gaze piercing through the darkness I had grown accustomed to. "There is a truth that transcends politics, religion, and ideology. And awakening to that truth means standing at the edge of darkness, shining your light into the void. I could sense the fragility of the moment, the urgency in his call stitched tightly with a promise that those brave enough to seek him would glimpse a path leading away from the shadows and towards the light. But as swiftly as the sigh, visions came. I felt gravity pulling me back, the weight of my own existence creeping over me again. I grasped at the knowledge imparted, desperate to hold on to the revelations, but the world awaited just outside my consciousness. "Remember, the cost of truth is steep," Jesus whispered. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, knowing my awakening might set off a chain reaction I could neither foresee nor control. I was only beginning to understand the sacrifices that would need to be made, but the fire kindled in my soul could no longer be extinguished. The path before me illuminated, promising hope amidst the chaos, urging me to speak out against the darkness and dive deeper into the truth. With every ounce of resolve, I prepared to step back into my life. A life transformed, yet still shrouded in the shadows of a world unready to hear the urgency of my message. I remember the day everything spiraled out of control, a day that began like any other. I was a nurse, entrenched in the rhythms of life, caring for my patients with the same dedication I applied to my family back home. I thought I understood the fragility of existence, the fine line between life and death, but nothing prepared me for what would unfold that fateful afternoon. It was a routine shift, filled with the humdrum of medical rounds and cheerful banter with co-workers, when a sudden crisis erupted. A catastrophic accident. The chaotic rush of sirens and the smell of blood filled the air. And it wasn't long before I found myself facing an agonizing decision: to save a life that had slipped through my fingers. At that moment, as the weight of my failure crashed over me, I felt an inexplicable pull, a force yanking my consciousness away from my body. Everything around me faded, and I plunged into an abyss, a near-death experience that stripped time of its meaning. I hovered above the scene, observing the frantic efforts of my colleagues, their faces etched in desperation as they fought to revive me. Then, enveloped in a transcendent light, I found myself in another realm, one teeming with divine presence. There stood Jesus, radiating a love that pierced through my darkest fears. He gazed directly into my soul, and for the first time, I understood the enormity of my life's choices. The motivations driven by fear and conformity, the muted passions that had lived in the shadows of my heart. Do you see the deception woven into the fabric of society? His words echoed around me, revealing a hidden agenda orchestrated by forces too powerful to fathom. It was as if I was shown an intricate tapestry where threads of truth and lies twisted together, blurring the lines of reality. I felt the weight of collective suffering, the wars, the divisions, the subconscious manipulations that enslaved humanity. I became acutely aware of how the elite disguise themselves, pulling strings while basking in the ignorance of the masses. It became clear that our world is engaged in a relentless, spiritual war, one that seizes the minds and spirits of those who remain entranced by superficial pursuits. The fight for awakening is not just for the individual, but for the very soul of our society. Images of conflicts flashed before me, endless cycles of hate and division fueled by leaders who thrive on discord. I felt the urgency to share these revelations, to wake others from their slumber of complacency. Tell them of this truth, Jesus urged, for the awakening begins through those who dare to hear. I was flooded with emotion, grappling with the precariousness of life and death. And yet, there was hope woven into his call. I understood that my journey had shifted from personal salvation to a collective mission, a calling to reach out to women trapped in a similar darkness, feeling the emptiness claw at their insides. As my spirit began to awaken in my body, gasping for air and returning to my reality, the weight of that encounter pressed heavily upon my heart. Each day became a battle against the mundane, the trivial distractions that threatened to drown out the urgent whispers I now carried. I sought out connections online, learning of other experiences, others who had felt Jesus touch their lives, especially within my own community. Each transcript of a conversion story resonated within me, igniting the fire of conviction that I no longer could suppress. I understood the risk I was taking, the implications of my actions in a world so entrenched in fear of the unknown. Yet, I felt a profound push to navigate through the tension, to explore the many layers of spirituality masked in the lanes of our everyday lives. In secret circles, I found solace among fellow believers. We shared our stories, our fears, and our hopes. Under the cover of darkness, we delved into the scriptures, finding affirmation and strength. The poetry we wrote and the stories we told became our tools of outreach, a subtle means of sharing the gospel without raising suspicion. I soon realized that awakening is not explosive. It often hides within whispers, gentle nudges meant to guide hearts back to the truth. My journey toward truth had transformed into a mission that went beyond my own revelations. The urgency mounted within me, compelling me to reach out, to uplift others, to heal together as we faced the shadows closing in, ever so slowly, around us. And just as I felt my heart beat with purpose, a new thought gripped me. A chilling realization that our battle had only just begun. I lived the life of an average man, waking up each morning to the sound of my alarm, the mundane routine of work and family obligations. I was a truck driver, crisscrossing states, delivering goods. It was a simple existence, long hours on the road with nothing but my thoughts and the radio for company. I often found solace in the hum of my truck, the rhythmic vibrations matching the beating of my heart. I took pride in my work, but deep down, I felt a restlessness, a longing for something more profound, something I couldn't quite grasp. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, I met with fate in a way I could never have predicted. A sudden heart attack struck me down as I sat in my cab, gasping for breath. Everything went dark. In that moment of darkness, I transitioned into a space that felt simultaneously void and filled with an overwhelming presence. I didn't know how to describe what I saw. It was beyond human comprehension. A light pierced through the darkness, and from that light emerged Jesus. His eyes held a depth and understanding that went beyond any earthly experience. He was both gentle and powerful, radiating a love that enveloped me entirely. No words were exchanged at first. It felt as if my very soul was laid bare before him. In an instant, the veil was lifted, and I was shown the stark truths about our world, the hidden agenda of the elite. I witnessed the machinery of manipulation at work in our society, like strings being pulled from the shadows. I saw political leaders cloaked in promises that served only their self-interests, and I felt the weight of their decisions crushing the hopes of countless lives. Each image burned into my memory. There was no room for denial. I saw the ripple effects of their actions, wars ignited by greed, the suffering of innocents, families torn apart, and communities decimated. It all played out in front of me, a tapestry woven with despair. Yet amidst this chaos, Jesus pointed me toward a revelation that hinted at hope. He spoke of a spiritual war raging behind the scenes, one that was far more significant than the battles we fought on the ground. This was a confrontation for the very essence of humanity, a struggle bathed in darkness and deception. I found myself drawn into visions of conflict that transcended our earthly perceptions. Skirmishes fought on spiritual fronts with devastating repercussions. It awakened something within me that I hadn't known existed, a fierce urgency to share this truth with others. It became painfully clear that the awakening of hearts was crucial in this battle, and time was not on our side. As I returned to my fading consciousness, I knew I couldn't live as I had before. The mundane appealed to me less. The truth was far too potent to ignore. I began to understand that I was called to guard the flickering flames of awakening. In my encounters with others, friends, family, even strangers, I felt compelled to share glimpses of the divine, writing down lessons learned with fervor. I spoke of Jesus, of the spiritual war, planting seeds of alertness and insight wherever I could. But as I gathered with others, An ever-looming darkness reminded me that the opposition was relentless, watching, waiting to extinguish any flicker of hope that we dared to ignite. The battle was far from over. It was just beginning, and deep within me, a sense of urgency grew stronger as I prepared for the confrontation ahead. It was an ordinary day in my life as a truck driver, one filled with the same routines I had grown accustomed to over the years. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow on the asphalt as I maneuvered along the winding roads of North Africa, the horizon stretching infinitely ahead of me. Suddenly, the peaceful rhythm of my day shattered when a reckless driver collided with my truck. In an instant, I was thrust into chaos, the world spinning, lights flickering. Then came the void, a near-death experience that would alter my perception of life forever. I found myself standing in a vast, luminous space, an overwhelming presence enveloping me. It was Jesus. He stood before me, not in judgment, but in love that transcended any earthly understanding. In that moment, I wasn't just a man. I was a soul encompassed by a divine light, and I felt the weight of every moment I had ever lived. "You've witnessed the struggles of humanity," he said, his voice resonating with a depth that pierced through my being. "You've seen the deception spun by those in power, the elite manipulating the truths to keep the masses blind and divided." As he spoke, a vision unfolded, a panorama of the world beneath us, rife with conflicts and disparities. I saw the suffering of families torn apart by ideological differences, one group pitted against another, with no room for understanding. In the shadows, leaders whispered of unity while sowing seeds of discord. A chilling realization struck me. This spiritual war isn't merely abstract. It's a battleground where our souls are caught in crossfire, where the hidden agendas of the powerful play out on the global stage. "They want you to remain asleep," he continued. "Awakening is the first step toward reclaiming your truth, taking a stand against the tide of deception that engulfs nations." Images flashed before my eyes. The rise of technology, how it was weaponized to control thought and access to information, a tool for manipulation rather than enlightenment. They were intent on erasing the lines between truth and falsehood. I could feel the urgency in his words. These were not just revelations, but warnings. You must share your experience, not merely for yourself, but for those who still wander in darkness, he urged. Their awakening is vital. Even in the quiet of a prayer, the heart that seeks can find me. My awareness shifted once again, the weight of reality pressing down as I felt the darkness of my impending fate. I wanted to cry out, to grasp the wisdom laid before me, but the light began to fade. The visions of turmoil and suffering wrapped around me like a shroud. I understood then that this was not just about personal salvation. It was about unearthing the truth hidden under layers of societal deception. As I was pulled back into my body, gasping for breath, I realized my journey was only beginning. A spark had ignited within me, a relentless force driving me to dig deeper into the spiritual truth. Back in the flesh, the world looked different. I returned to my routine, a truck driver laden with untold narratives. Mine was now transformed into a mission. I felt compelled to act, to share the revelations I had received. Yet each day was a battle. I carried the dread of isolation from my family. Despite this, I prayed fervently for reconciliation, my faith anchoring me as I stepped cautiously into conversations, urging others to awaken from the slumber of ignorance. Each interaction felt significant, as if I was planting seeds of change. The spiritual war raged on inside me, a whirlwind of emotions and obligations, pushing me toward the truths that lay ahead. My existence morphed into a relentless quest for understanding, and the thirst for awakening stirred within me like an insatiable fire. As I stand here, transformed by my encounter, I need to share something vital with all of you. Have you ever paused to consider the shadows lurking beneath our everyday lives? The unseen forces steering our paths, shaping our thoughts, because I believe there's a divine dance unfolding, a struggle between light and darkness that sweeps us all into its embrace. After meeting Jesus, I realized the intricacies of this spiritual war, far beyond personal transformation. It's about awakening the collective consciousness to the truth we've been conditioned to overlook. The world is resonating with a profound call for connection, beckoning us to disengage from fear and division. Each of us carries a piece of this sacred truth, a flicker of light meant to illuminate the darkest corners of existence. But are we willing to share our flames, or do we let them extinguish in silence? So now I turn to you. Have you ever experienced a moment, perhaps a whisper of hope, a dream, or a shift in perspective, that shook the foundations of your reality? Share your stories in the comments below. Together, let's seal our connections across this vast tapestry of souls, bridging gaps and igniting understanding. Your truth can be the spark someone else desperately needs. If you've felt that tug on your heart, if my journey resonates within your spirit, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond. Hit that notification bell, because what lies ahead is a deep dive into the revelations that can shatter the confines of our perceived realities. We must be ready to awaken together. In my next video, I'll share another breathtaking account, a soul's journey through the depths of despair and into the light of resurrection. I'm Amina. Thank you for joining me on this profound journey. Remember, the truth seeks you out when your heart is open, ready to embrace it. Embrace your awakening.